Good. So first, I would like to thank our panel of speakers for accepting to be part of our meeting today. And our panel includes three amazing women working on three different sectors. And we are very happy to have you come in and address some of the questions that we have put together for today's meeting. So today's meeting is discussing the concept of equity, diversity, and inclusion in the different workplaces. So before we start, so while we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to enhance our own understanding of local indigenous people and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and each of us in our own way try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Okay, so our agenda for today includes a brief introduction on our beloved IWS network, and we will allow the panelists to speak in an open table format in which they will be able to address the questions we have brought together as a group. And after that, we will open the floor to the general public for questions that you may want to ask our panel of speakers. And then we will have our concluding remarks. And then we would like to remind you of the breakout rooms that we have designated for this meeting today. So we would like to remind you in order to, if you would like to ask questions and are not comfortable asking it orally yourself, you can use the chat, or you can also use the chat for any technical issues that may rise during the meeting. And just to inform you that this meeting will be recorded. So if you have any reservations to that, please turn your camera off for any reservations. Otherwise, I would like to also introduce our leaders from Quebec City who will be assisting in the meeting. First, we have Sylvia Posey. She's a co-leader and co-chair in the IWS Quebec City. We have Alessandra Picora. She's also a new co-leader in the IWS. And we also have Romina Barreto. She's also a co-leader and a co-chair in our IWS network. So just a brief introduction of what is the vision we have in the IWS. We are here to build a collaborative network that supports and promotes equity, diversity, and inclusion on immigrant and international women from STEM backgrounds in Canada. So our mission is to share career, gender, and multicultural challenges. And this is brought up throughout our discussions. Before we were having in-person discussions, and now we are moving towards virtual discussions, which allow to provide networking and professional opportunities to whoever likes to join and become a member of IWS. We also offer mentorship whenever needed through our senior leaders, and our professional invited speakers as well are also open to such collaborations. So this is our vision for the IWS network. We would like to just summarize some main aspects. We've started in the year 2018. We have leaders from all over the city, from all over the Canada. Have multiple publications. We have started various collaborations within the cities, and we are very active on the social media, so you should feel free to join us and follow us on any social media handle you wish to attend to. So if you want to learn more about us and about the network, you are more than welcome to visit our website. You have all the information about our events, our programs, and our teams. So as I mentioned, we have IWS monthly meetings. We are committed to having these meetings on a monthly basis. We are committed to including very interesting topics that range from career transitions into science diplomacy. And like today, we have the topic of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we also have interesting programs within our network. We have Voices Without Frontiers, and we also highlight our members and our leaders every month, highlighting their work, highlighting their involvement, and highlighting their commitment to the network and to the field they work in. So feel free to follow us and contact us using any of these handles. We'll always be happy to respond. Any of us, whether in Quebec or any other city, we're all open to direct communication with anyone interested in joining the network. So without further ado, I would like to start by introducing the topic that we're discussing today. It's equity, diversity, and inclusion in the different workplaces. So when we were brainstorming an idea of what to discuss today, we really thought about different workplaces have different perspectives and different takes on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So in order to address that, we aim to contact one of the best to handle and address such questions. We have Ms. Bibiana Pulido. She's a co-founder and executive director of the Réseau Interuniversitaire Québécois Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So she will be able to handle a lot of the questions that come up. We have Ms. Rachel Boutin. She's also a senior advisor in equity, diversity, and inclusion at the NRC. So this is also exciting to see what perspectives she has on our topic today. And finally, we have Dr. Jacquelyn Jhingree. She's a senior scientist at Medicago, and we're really excited to really hear what they have to take on the topic today. So now I'll leave the floor to the co-leaders to introduce the speakers and address the questions we have put together.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being there. So we have prepared a few questions to give to our speakers. I'm going to start with the first one that we have to ask them. And I will just say that we will go with the order for the first one that Rezan just said. So I will do the question and I will ask Bibiana and then Rachel and then Jacquelyn to answer. So how can you define EDI in discussing equity, diversity, and inclusion? What is your take on each example? What is equity in diversity and inclusion?
Okay, so hi everyone, thank you for the invitation. I'll probably be brief because I want to leave you some stuff to say, Rachel and Jacquelyn. It's great to have this panel with you guys. And everybody has their perspective on what EDI, DEI, whatever you want to call it. So I'm not here to give a university class, but we could start off with diversity. You know, diversity is in all its perspectives, different identities. It could be related to, it could be related to sexual orientation. It could be related to gender. It could be related to age, to different backgrounds, international backgrounds. You know, when we see diversity, it's really in a large perspective. We could also, diversity is not only about, you know, the identity of the person, but also their expertise. You know, you guys are working in different workplaces, so everybody has a special expertise. Everyone has a different background. They've studied somewhere abroad, or they've worked in different workplaces. That is diversity as well. We could also talk about intersectionality. Probably we'll talk about it later, but everyone has a proper identity. So, and the idea with intersectionality, we could, you know, have a a whole session about that, but it's really the overlapping of different identities. So the notion of intersectionality came from one of the scholars in the States called Kimberly Crenshaw, but other scholars too, as Patricia Hill Collins. They've talked about intersectionality, and it's really about the idea that was behind that is that the reality of the women back then, and I think when we started speaking about intersectionality, it was like maybe the end of the 1970s. It was the fact that women of color, Black women, had different realities of white women. So obviously what they wanted to outline out of that is that we can't just look at gender. We have to look at other intersections, such as what we call race. Then afterwards, if I go with equity, sometimes we say, oh, when we talk to people, we're all equal, we all need equal chances. The fact is, we weren't born equal. We come from different backgrounds, maybe other countries. We were probably born in different socioeconomic backgrounds. There's richer, there's poor. Anyways, so the idea is we're not equal, and some people are more marginalized than the others. So the idea of equity is, it's to bring everybody in a way to be equal, to give that chance to everybody. And I don't know if you've seen that image. There's different images about the what's equity and equality, and equality is different. Maybe you've seen the soccer, where everybody is looking at the soccer, and they have a stool and everybody has the same height of the stool, but not everybody could see the soccer game because the little person, well, obviously is not big enough to see it. So then, you have when we talk about equity, you have the bigger stool for the little person, so that person could watch, the soccer game. But we want to go beyond that. We want to go to social justice. So in that case, what I usually say, it's not all images have that, but maybe we shouldn't think about, the barrier to be like, it could be, we could take that barrier off so everybody, could have access to it. So that's what I would say for equity, but yeah, I'm sure my colleagues have other great examples about that. That's the classic one. And inclusion, I think, is the most important concept when we talk about DEI. Why? Because, you could have diversity, you could talk about equity, but it doesn't mean anything, because you need to have people included in an organization. And I'm saying included, not integrated, because one of the concepts we say, and even in French, j'ai intégré quelqu'un, I integrated somebody in my team. Okay, great. But what does that person do? Do you guys implicate that person? Does she has that person has the opportunity, to give its opinion, to do we think about how people are in a team, how their well-being is impacted? Inclusion, DEI. So I is, I think, the most important one when we're talking about the diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you very much. A great answer. I will leave the floor to Rachel.
I thank you, Bibiana, for this great introduction. So first and foremost, I would like to acknowledge that I'm presenting today on the land unceded territory of the Mohawk people, and my pronoun is she. So I would like to start at the end, since Bibiana just spoke about inclusion. I totally agree with her. There is no EDI without inclusion. And often when, I'm asked, what do? I want to do something for EDI. I want to hire EDI. Well, you don't hire EDI. You may hire diversity. You may aim to be inclusive, provide equity for everybody through a process. But if you don't provide inclusion, if you don't make sure that everybody will be able to strive, have the same opportunity within your team, there's no reason why you should do the other two. So my former boss at the Public Service Commission used to say, and I'm pretty sure it's not from him, there's many saying, as there's many pictures about equity, diversity, and inclusion, but used to say, you know, there's something about being invited to the dance, but inclusion, it's been invited to dance. So you're not only hired, but you're invited to participate, be truly involved in what you're doing, and that we're asking you not to change yourself, but to really truly be who you are and bring your whole self to work. Well, this is something that we hear often. Sorry, but you know, the concept of bringing their whole self to work is really not to feel uncomfortable being yourself and providing your input, and we can see that being very important for different groups, for other groups for sure, but you know, I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about those with disabilities, so we know having someone with disability involved from the start go in research program or policies written or whatever, having them included to start with will truly help making sure that you have the best research as possible. Then going back to diversity, I think Bibiana said it all, but what I would like to say is diversity is not only, you know, the employment equity group, which we have at the federal government, which are the women, Indigenous people, visible minority, and a person with disability. It's more than that. It's all those intersections that Bibiana spoke about. But I just would like to say the single white able man is also part of diversity. So when we speak about being diverse, it's really a place for everybody to come and join. As for equity, well, I love the, you know, I always use the same image you're doing, Bibiana, but I saw another one that they added the fourth image, that is justice. And where, you know, even though, you know, there's an equal way to do it, but everybody has the same opportunity to do so as well. So for me, equity is really assuring ourselves that we provide the person with what they need to truly strive. So this is that for me. Sorry, Jacquelyn, I think you,
It's quite all right,
you have the
actually.
hardest job to do to come third.
I'm just going to be short and sweet. Firstly, thank you so much to Immigrant and International Women for allowing me to be part of this really interesting discussion. So I'll start with equity. I very much agree with both Bibiana and Rachel. For me, equity, it's not equality. It's about fairness. It takes into considerations barriers that minorities and marginalized people face. So equitable policies would be policies that aim to reduce these disparities, as both these ladies said. So it's pretty much creating a level playing field, right? So you elevate underrepresented groups to the level so that they will have the same chance as the privileged, right? Diversity, again, Bibiana said it all. A diverse workforce will include people from every group, and it's not only how you look, but it would also include a diversity of ideas, right? And research has shown a diversity of ideas leads to very innovative companies, actually. So it's a positive thing. And again, to reiterate what both these ladies have said, inclusion, you can have diversity, but you don't necessarily have inclusion, right? And I have a similar example like Rachel. You know, diversity is getting the dinner invitation, but inclusion is making sure everyone enjoys the meal, right? So if you hire 50% of women in a company, right, and you only have 2% of them in leadership role, that's not inclusion for me, right? So if you put it all together, I'd say equity in diversity and inclusion would include representation from all groups of people who are given the opportunity to be seen and heard and valued, and having policies and tools in place to help anyone that may be left behind, not because they aren't qualified, but because there are barriers to their progress, and it has nothing to do with talent or competence. Yeah.
Well, thank you, the three of you. Super nice question that I could start a discussion right now, but I'm gonna keep going with the plan, and I will ask the second question. After I ask the question, I'm gonna put it in the chat, so if someone missed any part, you will have it in the chat. And I will change the order. So it will be Jacquelyn, Rachel, and Bibiana. So Jacquelyn, you can go for it. And just to be sure, we remember that we have tried to get 5 minutes per answer maximum. Okay. So second question, it is, can you share some tools available in your workplace to help raise awareness about EDI and its implementation in the respective workplace?
Okay. So at Medicago, I know that there are it's taken quite seriously. Non-discriminatory policies are actively and publicly promoted in recruitment, in hiring, compensation, benefits, so equal pay, and the general treatment of employees. And I know that a result of these hiring policies is that we have 50% women on our executive committee. Yes, and 56% women overall in the company. And there are women in leadership roles scattered throughout. It's actually one of the things that stood out to me during my hiring process, actually. It's not something that I was looking for. Like I wanted to do interesting science, but it stood out to me because my employer at the time, where I was working in the UK, there were zero women on the leadership, on the executive committee, and barely any in leadership roles. So it's something that very much stands out to me. So they have policies that are actively promoted, and it's implemented, and it's reflected in what you see in terms of gender. So there is gender parity as well. Something interesting too, I've noticed that I see a culture of where women are super comfortable going on maternity leave and parental leave, and coming back to work and picking up where they left off. So I know, so it's a culture. So they have a culture where this is okay, because I've been in other cultures, and I know very many people, and very many women especially, who are super scared to actually tell their employer they're pregnant or they want to go on maternity leave and that kind of thing, right? So I think this is one of the things that helps in keeping women in a professional setting. You know, you acknowledge and recognize that the lives of women and minorities and other marginalized groups, right, is just different from men and other a privileged group, right? And having policies in place that, again, allow everyone the chance to have the same outcome, right, regardless of what group they belong in. So there is a general culture where that is seen, and there's also a general culture. It's actually one of the values there of collaboration, where that's encouraged. And you know, if you collaborate, then you get to know others a lot better, right? And you understand each other. And I think that's a very important thing culturally to understand where the other person's coming from, because I think there's a saying somewhere that says, you know, you fear what you don't understand, right? And so that's one of the things that help. So that's my current experience. Thank you for that. That's super nice to hear. Not every day we hear that. So Rachel, no, I think generally can as well. Sorry. No. We still have a long way to go, because I've looked at, so again, it's from a corporate perspective. I've looked at a report that was published last year, and it shows that overall in Canada, there's only still 20% women in leadership role in companies, and less than 5% minorities. So generally we still have a long way to go.
But here we are talking about this, so we are doing something.
Yeah.
To get that change. Thank you very much. So Rachel, we listen to you now.
Well, thank you. Love to hear that you have representation from women. I think NRC is pretty much there as well. We have representation throughout the organization. We're still tackling the challenge of intersectionality and making sure that women come from all different backgrounds. But we do see women at very high role within the organization as well. So we do a lot. Well, you know, one is creating my job. So there's a senior advisor for equity, diversity, and inclusion for the organization. And we do try to walk the talk and making sure that we promote events. So we are making sure that, you know, no important date is getting unnoticed with communication internally, as well as acknowledging those dates, as we did a whole month for the Black History Month, internal, external, with panels, discussion, and presenting, you know, what is really the situation of Black employees in STEM as they are facing different challenges. So we are presenting those. We are not shy of making sure that people hear about it and that we speak truly and honestly about those different subjects. We are currently doing our new EDI strategy for the next 3 years. So we had an employment system review, we have an accessibility review. So we're taking all of that and making sure that we have a plan where we're going to make people accountable for making a difference and making sure that we're not just saying you should hire more diverse, but making sure they do and they have the tools. There's mandatory training for all employees throughout their career. We have networks, and one of which maybe speaks to you is the Women in STEM. So we have a group that really tackles for the last 3 years different elements that came out of analysis of the barriers faced by women within the organization. And they were able to put in place all 9 recommendations that they have. And we have cafes where we can come and speak about, well, the woman in STEM, I'm not in STEM, but I'm still going because it's inclusive. But, I'm invited as well to attend, but we're making sure that everybody is able to speak. And with, COVID and the impact that this have on women more often enough than men within the organization, we're making sure we're providing them with the support they need. But I think that the most important work that we did in the last couple of months been to make a pledge, a commitment of action towards diversity, inclusive, anti-racist NRC. So we did make that pledge and have all the executives sign it, and now it's trickling down the organization and everybody's signing it, and it's a call to action and making sure they're accountable and they have to learn more from it and build an even more inclusive workplace. So I think this is one of our biggest achievement in the last couple of weeks. Of course, there's, self-identification, making sure people feel comfortable divulging whether, confidential or not. And we ask them once they self-ID, would you like to participate in any groups, EDI related subject or something like that? And we got, close to 75% of those that self-identify that wants to participate. And we are asking them to participate in those activities and so on. So there's a sense of kind of belonging that we're trying to implement and making sure that those that we're speaking about are invited to speak about it and part of this discussion.
Thank you, Rachel, for that insightful experience there in NRC. And now we can go with Bibiana.
Okay, so I probably have a different perspective because I'm actually probably not in a similar workplace as you guys. I mean, we're a network, we're a research institute. We work in questions and VDI. So we work in training, promoting, we do events, we build networks so people could, share practices, so it's a bit different and it's a bit tricky too, because we're a small organization, because I represent 2 organizations. And obviously, if you see, and I don't know if my colleagues would agree with me, but mostly women are going to be working and promoting EDI. So that's one of the problems. I think it's important, and Rachel said it. I mean, the white male is part of the diversity, and we do need more diversity, more men. And I mean, I'm not saying only white men. I mean, there's men from different backgrounds, different diversities, from different countries, with disabilities, so on. So it's important to include them in these talks. So it's not very diverse when we talk about our networks in EDI. Maybe one thing I'd like to mention, EDI is like the buzzword. Everybody's talking about EDI. I think in the last 2 years, I mean, we're going there. EDI is the best. But one thing to know, EDI is not new. It's just they called it EDI. It's cool and everybody's doing that. But, people have been working on that for hundreds of years. There's people that are working on racism, critical race theories, you know, people working on questions of sexism, feminism, disabilities, and so on. So EDI is nothing new. So people can pretend that they're like the experts and they know everything about EDI, because we have other experts that have been working on that before. And I think people that are being working on these issues before that, it's frustrating for them to hear that now everybody talks only about EDI. So it's important to recognize that other disciplines are included in EDI, anthropology, history, whatever you want to, industrial relations, HR. So it's important to take that into account. Nobody has the how would I say, the exclusivity to talk about EDI. And, you know, like, it's funny because what we look a lot what's going on, you know, in the corporate world, even in our universities, there's great stuff that is being done, but there's also horrible stuff. You know, people are making money out of this, you know, they're building into that, but that's not where we want to go. Of course, expertise need to be, you know, you need to be an expertise, because the problem we had, I remember like 3 years ago when we started talking about EDI, well, you know, a lot of people came to us and say, well, yeah, you know, we want to work in EDI. So could you help us out, for example, in our strategic plan or this, that, but for free? I mean, nothing is for free. We're experts. We need to get paid for what we do. But, you know, it can be excessive. And one of the things too, like if you're looking into like in your organizations to work in EDI, go look what nonprofit organizations are doing. I mean, there's lots of them that work in specific issues, like on Indigenous peoples, on questions of racism. So it's great to go see their expertise. And that's what we try to do a lot with the network, because we don't pretend that we have all the expertise. We have researchers, we have professors, we have students working on this. But for us, it's really important to do the link with institutions, organisms, nonprofit organizations that really have been working and that have the expertise on that. So what else could I add on? Rachel, I think you talked about self-ID, which is a bit tricky. I mean, we could talk about it later because we have a lot of issues regarding self-ID or self-declaration, whatever. I've been dealing with that legal stuff the couple of last months, but I think it's still a good practice. I think it's important to look what our population is in our organizations, but it's tricky because everybody's doing it. I know I'm not talking about NRC, but other organisms are doing stuff that is it's really bad. It's really bad. So just be like, if you're not sure what you're doing, just make sure like to consult. Even you have the Commission of Human Rights that also works on this. They're probably not going to give you the answer you want to hear, but maybe they'll help you out on that. And I know this is hard, and it's not like to give a critic to the event that we're doing right now. But one of the things we're trying to do more, it's really expensive for us but it's like to have more inclusive events. So for example, today we would have closed captioning, or we would have a sign language, ASL sign language. But I mean, I'm not complaining. It's so hard for us to like, sometimes we're like, we don't even have the funds, you know, to have closed captioning. We struggle for that. And we're really looking with governments and stuff like that, because we want to be more inclusive, but this is out of our league. This is too expensive. So in specific events, we're going to have closed caption, we're going to have sign language, but in others where we can't afford it, we don't have it. So it's probably something, you know, to think, not only in organizations, but how like probably government institutions could help us out to have more inclusive events. That's what I think.
Well, thank you, Bibiana. That's a really good point. We did have some IWS meetings that we have the captions, thanks to the speakers that were using that, but it's something that we need to take in consideration.
No complaints. Like I said, I mean, as for us, we're not perfect either. We struggle with that. It's hard to find also experts that do that. So I'm just saying that maybe somewhere in the world we could have like money come out of the.
It's a really good point. Thank you for bringing it. So thank you, the three of you. Amazing questions. I have way more questions, but I need to give the floor to Alessandra, that she will keep asking you the questions.
So hello. So we keep going with this interesting talk. And the third question is, what is your personal opinion or your ideas on improving diversity, equity, and inclusion? So if you want, you can share a personal experience or you can share ideas, recommendation used in your respective workplace so that we know that are 3 different workplaces. So I will give you the floor to Rachel first, then to Bibiana, and then to Jacquelyn.
Well, thank you. This is, between what I'm going to say and what I'm really able to do in my everyday life, there's a difference. So I think we need to, it needs to be from both sides. So from my side, I need to make sure that I am inclusive in everything I'm doing, and hearing about closed caption and everything. We do offer closed caption and translation, as we are the federal government, in most of our event. It's expensive, I totally agree, but some of the Zoom, often in English, already have a closed caption embedded in it that doesn't cost much. So FYI, they don't do French, but for now they do English. For the rest, I'm trying to be as much an ambassador as I can to the cause. So coming back to self-declaration, as the federal government does ask us to self-identify as much as I can. I do find myself self-declaring and telling people that I am a person with an invisible disability. And I find that by doing that, I'm able to let people know a little bit more about what it is, and bring down some myths about, how a person with disability cannot do exactly the same thing. I do feel too that it's our job to say, when we are faced with something that we know is not right, to say, well, we don't accept that over here. And this is something that's not easily done when it's somebody very higher up in the hierarchy, to tell them, well, you shouldn't be doing that. But it's something that we need to learn and let them know in the best way possible that, it could have been perceived, because sometimes it's not really, they didn't search for it, but sometimes it just, the perception of it could be for someone to be, feel bad about what they just heard. I'm trying to bring as much diversity as I can, and I've been doing preferred priority hiring for years, and making sure that I'm bringing more people in. And this is not to tick a box. It's not to get, someone to say, well, I have diversity within my team. It's to make sure that I have all the perspective, the knowledge, and that I'm allowing people to do their best and bring who they can to the workplace, and trying to think outside the box and making sure that we're helpful. I know at NRC we also have an ombud. The ombud could really help tackle some very challenging subject and so on. And we will be trying to have as much a safe space as possible, and doing talking circle and so on. We really want to provide a place where people will be able to come and speak of. But for my part, I really think that everybody has their part to do, and we should not be waiting for the organization to do it for us. We should start by ourselves, and maybe influence by example.
Thank you, Rachel, for this inspiring answer. So, Bibiana, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me try to say something different. Well, I think when I built the network a few years ago, a bit like you guys, I see that you guys are really work on the network, meeting every month, helping each other out. That's what when you guys approached me, I thought it was really interesting, and I had somebody explain me about the network. That's really important. Collaboration. It's all about real collaboration, you know, working together, how you could collaborate between each other, because sometimes that's you know, sometimes that's it's a challenge. You know, we all want to say we want to collaborate, but it's a bit hard, especially I see it within, you know, some of our universities. You know, there's personalities too. You're probably going to collaborate more with more than others. So I think it's a challenge, but I think we have to go into that. You guys also mentioned mentoring. Mentoring is so important, and mentoring is not only about, because you know we're working on mentoring, and you know I do mentoring. I do have mentors too. I think it's so important because that helps out a lot. But look at mentoring in a different way. Sometimes we see mentoring, you know, like the mentor is the person that knows everything, that has the experience, and you know they know everything. But it could be like I call it reverse mentoring, whatever. I'm not the expert on mentoring, but you know, it could be a person coming from abroad that has a different perspective, and you know that has to mentor somebody like the, you know, the white male or whatever, the dominant person. So look at mentoring in different perspectives, not in like the classic one. So I do agree mentoring is quite important. And probably the last thing I would have to say, because you know there's so much, and when I have so many ideas, so like that's not a problem. But I look with my colleagues, I look at other people that work in EDI or not, you know, that they probably don't have the official position of an EDI leader or whatever. You don't need that to be doing EDI, but a lot of people get sick. A lot of people get tired. They go on burnout because it's too much for them. You know, you want to do so much, but don't put like, if I would have, and I've had colleagues who said, you know, I had to tell them, you know, you can't put everything on your back. You know, you need help, you need to collaborate. And when you know it's too much, well, you just back out. You know, I mean, your personal health is more important, because you're not going to be able to continue in this. And that's one of the challenges I've been seeing a lot with different colleagues. And probably they don't mention it because, you know, not everybody's going to talk about mental health publicly, but I'm not like saying this person has this, that. And even me, like, if I take it on a personal note, sometimes I'm like, oh, wow, this week was like too much. You know, I need just to, you know, go back and say, well, you know, I'm not God and I can't change everything. So take into account the most important thing is your mental and physical health.
Thank you, Bibiana. I'm happy to hear this from you, because as IWS, we really believe in mentorship as well as in support, and be supporting each other, and also for everyone is getting in the network. So Jacquelyn, it's your turn now.
Okay, so I've had to think about this from the corporate side, right? So I have a very different perspective. So since I work in industry, I think that an industry has a huge entrepreneurial or business side, right? I think that the first thing to get companies to improve this is that you have to convince them that there is an added incentive to promote a diverse workplace, right? And to have diversity and inclusion policies and be serious about it, right? So I think equity, me personally, I think equity, diversity, and inclusion is the morally correct thing to do. But for companies who are looking at profit, they need to be convinced. And there are so many studies out there, like I was reading up on this, that show that a diverse workplace leads to more innovation and definitely more profit. So for a few examples, there is a 2018 McKinsey report that showed racially and ethnically diverse companies have a 33% performance advantage over companies lacking diversity. A Harvard Business Review in 2013 also showed that diverse companies are 70% more likely to capture new and more diverse markets in a globally connected world, right? In 2018, a Boston consulting group also showed that diverse companies with diverse management teams have 19% higher revenue due to innovation. And that actually makes a lot of sense to me, right? Because if you've got a diverse workforce, you'll have more ideas, right? And people will bring a whole host of different perspectives to the table. So I think once I look at it from a practical perspective, as long as companies can see that it benefits them, there's an added advantage. It's not only morally correct, and they will be on board and they'll be excited about doing it. And then of course, the usual, like you encourage them to hire a diverse workforce, to have a culture that allows everyone to have a fair chance at the same outcome. And that would include things like gender parity on boards, gender parity in executive committees, representation of minority groups on both, and as well as throughout the company. And again, it's not, like Rachel said, it's not just to check boxes, right? It means the inclusion of qualified people that would have been excluded if you don't have these policies to begin with, right? So that my main point is that from a corporate perspective, there is a huge incentive for diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And of course, you encourage a culture of collaboration, inclusion, and fairness. So that's my take.
Thank you, Jacquelyn. Really interesting. It's really amazing to know the three different opinions from you. So it's really interesting, inspiring also. So the fourth question and the last of this panel will be, what should a person in your workplace do if she feels that EDI isn't respected or properly implemented? So sometimes it's difficult to even realize that there is no equity or to feel included. So how this person can react to this? How you would help this person to be aware of EDI? So the floor will be first for Jacquelyn, then for Bibiana, and then for Rachel. Thank you.
So at Medcago, we've got a range of policies that deal with this, from verbal to psychological harassment to physical and sexual abuse, right? So and there is a process, the first stage would be, if someone does or say something to make you feel uncomfortable, of course the obvious thing to do is to let them know that it's unsolicited, right? And that's how you feel. However, if it's something quite serious, then there is a formal process, and you would, of course, report it to your immediate supervisor, or you go to HR. And then HR has it's a process. They will investigate. They will appoint an investigator. Evidence will be collected. They will talk to people, everyone involved. And then it goes to the Chief Human Resource Officer, and then that person will review and make a decisions. And the decisions range from warnings to dismissal, depending on how serious it is. And they're very serious about violation of any of these policies, particularly against protected groups. And so also, if there are legal violations, then the authorities will be involved. So they have a process that's laid out that anyone can follow. And yeah, so I mean, I've known, well, it's confidential information, but I do know of examples as well in another company where I worked, where it's the same, and someone had to go through that process. But yeah, so there is a process.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting to know that there are these measures and people can rely on this measure if there is a problem. So now the floor is for Bibiana.
Thank you. It's actually a very interesting question, because some people are not going to, they're going to leave the organization. And that's one of the problems we have in EDI, the retention, you know, when they feel they don't feel comfortable, they don't see that they have a safe space, you know, to speak even to like their superior colleague. The easiest way, and it's not the best way, it's, you know, you're going to say, here, I have this problem, I'm going to leave. Having dealt with, you know, harassment and that, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. Jacquelyn, you've mentioned, you know, HR and everything. I'm an HR specialist, so I have the right to be critic about that. It's not perfect. It depends of the organization, but it's so not perfect. And I think one of the main things, because, you know, I've seen it and I've been through that, I think everybody needs, it would be great if everybody would have like a small course or a small training on conflict management. I mean, just that would help so much. And even if it's like, it's not only like, you know, HR or like board of directors, everybody should have a little crash course on what conflict management is, because I think that would help out a lot. Obviously, if you feel comfortable, the best way, in my way, is to say to your superior, you could go to HR, look at the internal channels of what you have to do. There's a lot of organisms, institutions that have official policies related to harassment. Like I mentioned, they're not perfect, so don't take into account. One of the things is you have to educate yourself too. So for example, as a person, you have to educate yourself about what is psychological and sexual harassment. It's really important, because you're going to be able to deal with this. If it doesn't work with HR sometimes, and I've seen it, and Rachel, you mentioned ombudsman, sometimes it doesn't work. So you have to go with the exterior channels, and it's important that everybody knows what it is. So like, I know there's people across Canada here, you know, there's different, each province has their own ways, but let's say for Quebec, you have two options. Either you go to the Commission of Human Rights of Quebec to do a complaint, because, you know, you went through all the channels. Obviously you try to do what you had to do, but if you don't see that that nothing is working out, and if you feel that you have the capacity and you have the energy to go and do a complaint to the commission, I would say you go to the commission. There's also la commission, la CNEST, la commission des normes du travail, whatever I could put it that. You could do a complaint there also, and they're going to help you out. It's not an easy process. Not a lot of people, and to win, you know, cases of psychological or sexual harassment. But, you know, there's mediation, you know, there's stuff. So, I mean, you just inform yourself, train yourself. Actually, if it was made in Quebec, if you speak French, there's this actually really good document that was made from, it's a CSMO, it's called le Comité sectoriel de main-d'œuvre d'économie sociale. And they've done a really, really good document on harassment, psychological harassment. I think it's one of the best ones I've seen lately, because I've looked into that, and that could be a great resource. I don't know if they translate it in English, but it's a good way. So to wrap up is, you have to create that safe space before people leave. Everybody should have a crash course on conflict management. And third, everybody in an organization has to know the process if there is a case of sexual or psychological harassment.
Thank you, Bibiana. I just share some a link that you mentioned on the chat, and if you want to do the same for the other reference you did, that will be really helpful. Thank you. So Rachel, it's your turn now.
Thank you. I'm going to echo what Jacquelyn and Bibiana say, but I'm going to go another way. I'm going to go not about harassment, but about how do you feel about inclusion. You know, you come in and you're, you know, an ambassador for the cause of racialized employees or for those with disability or so on, what would you do within the organization if you don't see it going where you think it should be going? So I think it starts with us, and I think it's not the first time I'm saying that today, but it takes courage. But I think, you know, it will have to start with us, and making your small bubble, you know, knowledgeable, and finding videos to, you know, I love the inclusion starts with I send it to people to start the discussion, you know, find ways to start discussion with your teammates and your manager. You could always look, well, I'm talking about the federal government, you know, we have our own ways of working. So we have committees often enough, there's champion for different groups. So go look what they're doing, inform yourself, involve yourself, go within that committee. And there's always employee survey where you can say, well, you know, what is lacking and so on, and use the pot. It's not always easy. And I've done that, saying, well, I cannot change it, so I'm going to change job. So it happened. We all been there, I'm pretty sure, trying to make a change. And at one point we saw, well, it doesn't move, but, you know, dig in. I'm pretty sure there will be a lot of people that will be interested in helping you make that change. Of course, the burden is not always on you as well. So use, you know, well, the government, we have I think everybody has the evaluation period where you can speak to your manager, speak about your passion about inclusion and so on, and what you could do. Maybe they could put you on a specific project. So I think it's to acknowledge that you have a need, and coming with not, you know, a really applicable solution, but, you know, not just complaining, say it doesn't work, say, well, it doesn't work, here's what I'm proposing, and be part of that change. And I think this could help.
Thank you, Rachel. I really believe that after this amazing panel, a lot of people will really understand that doing something but in everyday life can really make the change. So for the moment, I will leave the floor to Silvia. So we leave you with Silvia, she will take care of the question from the chat. So I remind to our participant that you can write your question on the chat or just raise your hand. And so Silvia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. So yes, for every one of you that wants to ask any further question, we already asked for questions to the panelists, and they were really kind to answer to all these questions and give us all these amazing opinion and perspective. And I guess we learned a lot about EDI today. So feel free to raise your hand. I will, before unmuting, please raise your hand so we can then, you can then start ask the question if you want, or just write it on the chat if you want. We'll give a little bit of time. I take this time to really thank the three speakers that we had. They were amazing and really kind, and I guess they really helped us today to understand a little bit better this concept of the EDI, which is, I guess, on the mouth of everyone in those days, but not everyone really use it properly or understand it properly. So again, thank you so much for your perspectives, opinions, and your thoughts. And yeah, you're welcome.
I think I will break the ice. Just
go on.
This will be more for Bibiana because it's more related to the academia, the academy. So because I was a student here in Quebec at Université Laval, and as a student, I've seen a lot of situations in which EDI was not really respected. I was seeing students getting frustrated. I can give you an example. For instance, like the PhD here, it's super long in Quebec as in Canada. So sometimes there are PhD that are lasting 3 years, PhD that are lasting 8 years. And for real, sometimes the rules seems to be different for each student. And I was really feeling the frustration from the students, and I was dealing with the university to see if the university could do something, but it was like really difficult to manage the situation. So I would like to know from you how university is actually implementing this lack of equity, and what is doing to feel the students equal in terms of years of studying, in terms of rights, and so on. I'm really curious about.
It's an interesting question, Alessandra. Actually, I do in a way connect with you. I'm still a doctoral student. Like I'm finishing my thesis in one day. But maternity just does have an impact. The maternity has an impact. Having like, as you can see, I'm not how would I say, typical PhD student. I have, I'm working, I'm committing to so much stuff. I teach, I do this, I do that. So I'm probably, the more a typical student there, but I do agree. And I've been really privileged as a student. I got funding, everything. I always got supported with my research team. And even though now I'm less connected because, obviously I have other responsibilities. I mean, I can't complain for myself, but I've seen international students, I've seen colleagues that come from abroad and they struggle. They struggle because you see it's like a two-way. You have like the Canadian Québécois, students, that were educated in Quebec, that they know everything. And then you have, for example, I'm taking example, colleagues that come from Africa, from Arabic countries, and you see that they don't have the same chance. They don't have the information, and they're not mixing. And institutions are not doing quite nothing about it. So it's hard to see that. And but that's like more in a personal view because I've lived through that. I've seen that with some colleagues at Université Laval, and I think probably there's this group Apicule that is L'Apicule is a students that are parents, and they did this whole document of how the institution should recognize that their realities, more and more people have kids, and they study and so on, and it's quite difficult. So the way I see it, it's more the students that take the initiatives, and the institutions are probably looking into it. It's not perfect, and we saw it also with COVID. When the pandemic started, international students that were in the living in the residential buildings, there was issues with them. They couldn't live there anymore. So we saw some students that were in panic because they couldn't be living there. How they would get back home. I actually don't know exactly what the institution did, but it was quite challenging. And I think the problem with academia is seeing that a PhD is 4 or 5 years, whatever, and then you get you have to go and have either be a professor or a researcher. But people could do, and Jacquelyn, I think you're probably best suited to say that because you probably have a different perspective because you work now in the corporate world. But a PhD is not only about being in academia and being a professor. There's so much you could do with that, and that's not valorized. It's not valorized by our institutions. So I don't have the answer.
I think maybe the answer is not there, and I hope it will change. Yeah, Jacquelyn, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I spent a good amount of time in academia, right? I didn't have the straightforward path. I started a PhD at the University of Alberta, but my dad passed away and life got difficult, so I took time off. I worked a bit, and then I went to England for one of the reasons I went to England is because it's shorter. I wanted to get it done in a shorter period of time, as opposed to restart it again in North America. But the having spent time in both systems, and I personally think that there is a lot of exploitation, especially for grad students and at the postdoc level. And like you said, I do agree with you, Bibiana. There isn't a single answer. Because as an immigrant living in different parts of the world, part of it is also culture, how we deal with things. It's very different from the system that's existed, as well as you have to deal with grad school at the same time. But so that's why I was going to ask you, right? I was curious what is the general structure that you would go through if you're not respected in an academic institution, like. What do you think is the ideal? Hello?
Are you asking Alejandra?
Yeah, I'm asking Bibiana, more of a discussion, because I do agree there isn't an easy answer. There is a lot of it's a systematic problem that's going to take a really long time to fix.
I mean, there's so many issues, like we mentioned, like maternity for women, but it's also fathers, some students they take paternity. It could be related when you take care, like in your case, Jacquelyn, obviously, like it was hard when your father passed out. This stuff, it's not always taken into account. Funding, how funding is so important when you do graduate studies, and we have international students that come from abroad. And I mean, it's not because they come from abroad that they're rich, and some are, but the other ones, they struggle. We've seen families putting money together to bring one of their person to a country like Canada. There is so many issues that we've been working also with l'Union Étudiante, which is l'Union Étudiante. There's all the students association, but l'Union Étudiante is like a federator of some of the unions for students. And one of the major issues they've been working for, and we'll be working with them, is mental health. Mental health has an issue too. If you have mental health problems, you struggle, obviously you're probably not going to finish your PhD in 4 years. So I mean, there's no great answer. I think what I would have to say, finish off, I'm always impressed how students are so mobilized, and how like other parts of the universities are so non-mobilized. And I always get frustrated, because in the case of Université Laval, where we had students working, parent students that been, they've been working on that, and they're being, they wrote the whole document, but I mean, not a document, it's like it's an essay of 100 pages on blah blah blah, and so, on like best practices, this and sometimes the direction says, oh yeah, well we have our we did that for our student parents. It's not them that did them, it's the students. So acknowledge what the students are doing, and they're doing so much great job. Who's more advanced in EDI in the universities? It's the students.
Yeah, definitely.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm proud.
I thank both of you. We have a question from Adriana. Adriana, you can unmute yourself and go ahead with the question. Adriana? Okay, so maybe I can read the question of Mina, who she wrote, is equity, diversity, and inclusion being considered in the hiring process in your institution, or in general? How do you see this how do you see this improving in Canada, specifically in the hiring process? Sorry for
if you don't mind, ladies, I can go, as I've been in recruitment for a while. I'll be speaking about NRC, but know that the federal government is doing pretty much the same thing. So I I would not say well, yeah, we can say it's EDI, but first and foremost, we're working a lot on equity, employment equity for the 4 groups that I spoke of earlier today. So the women, Indigenous people, person with disability, and visible minorities. So you'll see more and more process being open specifically for those groups. So the government is trying to really attract more people and trying to bring down some barriers on some possible prejudice that some people could face by doing a prioritized recruitment for those specific groups. But by doing that, saying that we will be prioritizing those groups, we need to make sure though that the process is adjusted for those groups, that we don't necessarily post the same way, that we don't evaluate the same way, and that we offer proper recommendation for everybody that needs it. So I would say it's a focus within the government, and NRC is doing this as well. We're really trying to make sure that we are improving on our ways to attract more people. But speaking about inclusion, we're also trying within our pool of internal candidates that we promote promotion practices, mentoring, sponsorship, and all of that. So we're implementing those tools in place, and we will be trying to prioritize those within the employment equity group, underrepresented group, to make sure that if they didn't have the same chance as the other one to promotion, that we will be facilitating it and offering them as many tools as they can to move forward within the organization. So I would say sometimes it's just a number, but some organization, as NRC is doing, it's not that. It's really that we want to make sure everybody has their place. And we have 89 nationality within the organization, 30% Francophone, and so on. So, we're very, very happy with everybody that is on board. So please come apply, follow us, follow NRC on Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on. It's a fantastic place to work, and we're always looking for new researchers. So come and join. Sorry, I had to sell. I had to come and get you guys.
Thank you,
Hello,
Rachel.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm Adriana. Sorry, I was having problems with muting my telephone. So I would like to do a comment about, it's really good, all the strategies that now they are developing to help women to have more inclusion, but I think that is going to help a lot the second generations, but for the first generation of women that we arrived to Canada, we are still dealing with problems to enter into the system. Even with the Canadian experience, I'm going to talk about my case a little bit. I did a PhD at the University of Montreal. After that, I did a postdoc. And after that, I went into maternity leave. So, and I decided to take a break of 2 years because I had some problems during the childbirth and I need more time to recovery. We moved to another province also, from Montreal to Toronto. And when I tried to restart my career again, it was impossible. And until now, it's impossible to enter in this system because I don't have right now enough publications, because I have a gap of 2 years. I have a job right now that is not completely directed with research. I'm working.
For sharing your experience with us. I think, from my point of view, there's still a lot to be done. Even as an immigrant, I recognize that Canada is far ahead than other countries. There's still a lot to do. That's why we are here to speak and to understand. If some of the panelists wants to give a comment, say something. Otherwise,
sorry, I was going to ask her if she applied to industry positions as well.
Yes, I applied I'm working for a biotechnology company, but I started working more as a sales representative because at the time there were not a lot of options. And I decided to start putting in my cover letter that I took a break because I had bad experience with interviewers, like they were telling me, okay, what are you doing right now? And I say, okay, I'm stay at home. Yes, but in the last 2 years, what had you been doing? And I was like, I stay at home taking care of my newborn daughter. And I saw the face and it was like, okay, we will call you. So I decided to put on my cover letter that I took a break of 2 years in a way like to be sure that the people that contact me, they already aware of this.
Yeah, I know it's we do have a long way to go. And that's why I said that I think where I'm currently working, it's an anomaly. It's very different that we've got gender parity, and women are quite comfortable with maternity leave and coming back, and they do pick up where they left off. So it's yeah, I do know that's it is many employers just throw that out, and it's kind of hard to give. You're not usually given a fair chance. I don't have the solution actually.
Maybe I could add on. I mean, I think it's Adriana. I agree what you're saying, and you're probably not the only one living this, and it's really hard, especially if you have immigrated to Canada, and you know, you always look for a better place, you know, to build your career, to have a future for your family. So it's not cool to hear that. In university and academia, we've been working a lot into that. We've been working with funding agencies like INSERC, Fonds de Recherche Québec, CRCs. We've been, you know, working on the concept of inclusive excellence, you know, like excellence. What is excellence academia? Is it publishing, like you say, you know, like I don't know, 10 articles a year, you know, and maybe take into account other ways that excellence could be, you know, could be seen. And actually, some of the funding agencies now, they have, like, when you built your proposal, you have a part where you could write, for example, in your case, well, you know, I had 2 years off because I had to take care of my daughter and this and that. It started, you know, it's just the beginning. I don't know exactly how it is, if it's really working out. I hope it is. But there's committees behind that. So it's important, you know, to really have training, to really talk about this, because it's a system. It's so sad to see, it's a system, and everybody, and I've done consultations with different professors, with different researchers, and especially with COVID right now, you know, they have the pressure to publish, and you know, so they could, you know, they could have a position, they could have a promotion, and it's really hard. It's really hard. I mean, it's I think there's no best solution at the moment, but I do agree that it's a big problem that we have, and there's a lot of women, but I think other people that are living this situation.
If I may, I know there's organization that provides support and find employees for businesses. So I have no name that comes in mind, but I know there's Lime for those with disability, but I know there's for some for women in STEM. I spoke to some of them. Sorry, the name, you know, for me, it's very late right now. So the name doesn't come back, but look it up. There really is. And their job is to find employment to person, and they charge for it to the organization and not to you. So they could be maybe somebody that could help put you forward, or apply to NRC. You know, the gaps, I have gaps in my CV, and it's not because I didn't work, it's just it's not relevant to the position I'm applying for. So apply for us.
Okay, I thank you. I thank you, the three of you, the three panelists, for being with us, and again for sharing your perspective and ideas and thought about EDI. Before, so we can conclude the meeting. Before opening the breakout rooms, which they will be divided by cities, so you can join the member of the city where you live, or you can network with other cities. I want just to share quickly my not a presentation, it's just a slide about the next meeting of IWS. It will be May 27th, organized by Toronto, and they will be on how to bring out the leader that is in you. So I again thank you all the panelists, I thank you all the attendees, and I hope to see you all next meeting. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Do we have to stay for the groups? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Up to you. Up to you. It's definitely, well, it's for the breakout room. It's more to get in touch again with our members, city members, because doing everything virtual for us, then we lost the contact with our members. But you're free to go. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank
thanks
you. And
for you.
Bibiana, I'll be reaching out to you soon. So follow us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and
thank you so much for participating.
It was Rachel. I knew Rachel before, but Jacquelyn, it was a great
pleasure, Jacquelyn.
Same here.
Reach out if we could, collaborate. And I mean, for the whole network, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. Even if it's like 6:30 in the evening and we have kids at home, I said it was amazing to be here with you guys.
Absolutely true, but you know, it's, I mean,
I'm joking around, as you see. I'm very, but it was great. And
I totally understand. But then when it's a matter of organizing within Canada, it's oh wow.
No.
So
let's keep in touch and see what else we can do together in the near future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Meeting you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.